Most people over 60 with type 2 diabetes believe that what they drink before bed does not really matter, as long as it contains no sugar. But here is what nobody tells you. A 2023 study from the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism tracked 147 diabetic patients over 60 for 12 weeks. The patients who consumed specific beverages before bed saw their fasting morning glucose drop by an average of 23 milligrams per deciliter. The control group, who changed nothing, saw zero improvement. That is nearly half a point off their HbA1c from one single evening habit. And the 3 drinks causing the most damage at night? One of them carries a label that says it was designed specifically for people with diabetes. If you often wake up with high morning blood sugar after 60, this video is for you. I am Dr. Emily Hartwell, and joining me today is Doctor Nathan Ashworth, a physician with 33 years of clinical experience helping older adults manage metabolic health, blood sugar, and healthy aging. Welcome to the Gold Years. Dr. Ashworth, before we get into the 5 drinks, I think many of our viewers are going to want to understand something first. Because most of them have been told for years that what happens to their blood sugar overnight is simply about what they ate for dinner. But you have always said that is only part of the story. Is that right?
That is exactly right, Emily, and I am glad you are starting there. Because until a person understands what is actually happening inside their body between roughly 10 at night and 6 in the morning, the 5 drinks we are about to discuss will seem like simple home remedies. But once you understand the biology, you will see why each one of them is genuinely powerful. And I promise you, by the end of this conversation, you will look at your bedtime routine very differently. Absolutely. And this is where I want to start, because what I am about to explain is something most people with type 2 diabetes have never been told, even by their own physician. When you fall asleep, your body enters what we call a fasted state. In a healthy person, the liver quietly rests during this time. But in older adults with type 2 diabetes, the liver does not always receive that message clearly. Instead, in the early hours of the morning, somewhere between 2 and 4 o'clock, the liver begins releasing stored glucose into the bloodstream through a process called gluconeogenesis. I call this the overnight liver release. And it is the reason so many of my patients go to bed at 110 milligrams per deciliter and wake up at 145, despite eating nothing overnight whatsoever. Your liver, in a sense, is running its own kitchen at 3 in the morning while you are fast asleep, and nobody sent it the memo saying the restaurant was closed.
That is quite an image, Dr. Ashworth. So when patients blame themselves for those high morning numbers, they are actually missing the real cause entirely. Is that right?
Precisely. And that misunderstanding leads people to make the wrong adjustments. They cut dinner earlier, they skip their evening snack, they drink plain water, and nothing else. But none of that addresses what the liver is doing independently in the middle of the night. The 5 drinks we are discussing today work because they specifically target that overnight liver activity, along with 2 other biological mechanisms that most people have never considered.
You mentioned 3 mechanisms that these drinks work on simultaneously. Can you explain those briefly before we get into the drinks themselves? Because I think understanding the why makes everything that follows far more compelling for our viewers.
Gladly. The first mechanism is suppressing that overnight liver glucose release by improving insulin sensitivity during sleep. The second is stimulating what we call incretin hormones, the same hormonal pathway that certain modern diabetes medications attempt to replicate. And the third, which is perhaps the most overlooked, is improving the depth and quality of sleep itself. Because deep, restorative sleep reduces cortisol levels. And elevated cortisol is one of the most underappreciated drivers of morning glucose resistance in people over 60. When you sleep poorly, your cells become more resistant to insulin by morning. These 3 mechanisms are interconnected. And the right bedtime drink can support all 3 simultaneously.
So, essentially, the right drink before bed is not just about hydration. It is actively working with your body's own overnight chemistry. Now, Dr. Ashworth, you mentioned that one of these drinks costs less than 40 pence per serving and outperforms many over-the-counter sleep supplements on the market. Which drink is that? And what makes it so surprisingly effective at that price point? Dr. Ashworth, you mentioned that the first drink costs less than 40 pence per serving and works on magnesium, a mineral most people over 60 are quietly deficient in without ever knowing it. What exactly is this drink? And why does magnesium matter so much for overnight blood sugar control?
The first drink is unsweetened almond milk, warmed gently with half a teaspoon of true Ceylon cinnamon stirred in. Now, almonds provide approximately 75 milligrams of magnesium per cup, and this matters enormously because after 60, the kidneys become less efficient at retaining magnesium. You simply lose more of it through urine each day, and when magnesium levels drop, every cell in your body becomes more resistant to insulin. A 2022 meta-analysis published in Diabetes Care, reviewing 18 separate studies, confirmed that magnesium supplementation significantly improved fasting glucose and insulin sensitivity, particularly in older adults. Add Ceylon cinnamon, which contains bioactive compounds called cinnamaldehyde and procyanidins that activate insulin receptors directly, and you have a genuinely powerful combination for under 40p a serving. Drink it 30 to 60 minutes before bed. One practical caution: if you are on calcium channel blockers for blood pressure, start with half a cup initially and speak with your prescribing doctor, as magnesium can enhance that medication's effect.
That is remarkably affordable for something with that level of evidence behind it. Now, the second drink pairs two ingredients that most people would never think to combine, and you say together they do something that neither can achieve alone. What is that unusual pairing, and why does it specifically help the liver during those critical overnight hours?
Chamomile tea combined with 1 tablespoon of raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar. Chamomile contains a compound called apigenin, which binds to GABA receptors in the brain, promoting deeper sleep and simultaneously improving cellular insulin response. A 2023 study in the Nutrition Journal followed 64 type 2 diabetic patients drinking chamomile tea regularly for 8 weeks. Their HbA1c dropped by an average of 0.52%. Now add apple cider vinegar. Research from Arizona State University demonstrated that consuming vinegar before bed reduced next morning fasting glucose by 4 to 6% by slowing the liver's overnight glucose release. The reason we pair them is simple. Apple cider vinegar alone on an empty stomach can irritate the esophagus, especially after 60, when the lower esophageal sphincter weakens slightly. Chamomile coats and soothes the stomach lining naturally. Together, they complement each other beautifully. Brew 1 cup of chamomile, allow it to cool to warm, stir in 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar with the mother, and drink it 45 minutes before bed. If the sharpness is too much initially, a few drops of liquid stevia soften it considerably without affecting blood sugar.
Dr. Ashworth, before we continue to drinks 3 and 4, I understand you have a patient story that illustrates perfectly why ignoring these overnight signals for even a few months can lead somewhere nobody expects. Can you share that with us?
Yes, and I think this story will resonate with many people watching. I had a patient, I will call him Edward, 73 years old, a retired civil engineer from Bristol, meticulous man, kept a glucose diary, took his metformin without fail, walked 30 minutes every morning. By every measure, he was doing everything correctly. And yet his fasting glucose sat stubbornly between 155 and 160 milligrams per deciliter for nearly 2 years. He came to me genuinely frustrated, almost defeated. When I reviewed his evening routine carefully, I discovered he was drinking 2 cups of a popular branded herbal tea before bed each night, believing it was completely harmless. It was not. We will come back to why shortly. But once we replaced that tea with the third drink I am about to describe, and adjusted one other small habit, his fasting glucose dropped to 128 within 7 weeks. He rang my office on a Tuesday morning, and I could hear the relief in his voice from across the room.
That is a remarkable turnaround in a short time. Now, this third drink surprises almost everyone when they first hear it, because most people associate it with something entirely different from blood sugar control. What is drink 3, and what is the specific mechanism that makes it effective overnight?
Diluted pomegranate juice. 2 tablespoons of 100% pure pomegranate juice stirred into 8 ounces of cold water. Pomegranate contains powerful polyphenols called punicolagens and ellagic acid, which inhibit an enzyme called alpha-glucosidase. That enzyme is responsible for breaking down complex carbohydrates into glucose in the intestine. By slowing that process, you reduce the glucose load reaching your bloodstream from your evening meal for several hours into the night. A study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that pomegranate polyphenols also supported the function of pancreatic beta cells, the very cells responsible for producing insulin. At that dilution ratio, the total carbohydrate content drops to approximately 5 grams per serving, which is well within safe limits for most people managing type 2 diabetes.
5 grams of carbohydrate, with that level of metabolic benefit, is genuinely impressive. But I know our viewers are waiting for what you called your most powerful drink, the one you reserve for patients whose fasting glucose simply refuses to move regardless of what they try. Is that coming next?
It is. And I have to say, when I first encountered the research behind it, even I was taken aback by the numbers.
Dr. Ashworth, drink 4 involves something most people think of purely as a sleep aid, but you say it does something remarkable for insulin resistance simultaneously, almost like 2 treatments in one glass. What is it, and why does combining those 2 effects matter so much for people over 60?
Tart cherry juice, diluted carefully. 2 tablespoons of 100% tart cherry juice in 8 ounces of water. Now, tart cherries contain 2 things working in parallel. First, natural melatonin, which promotes deeper, more restorative sleep. And, as we discussed earlier, deeper sleep directly lowers cortisol and reduces morning insulin resistance. Second, and this is what genuinely excites me about this fruit, tart cherries are rich in anthocyanins, the deep pigments that give them their distinctive color. A 2023 clinical trial published in the journal Nutrients followed 37 adults with metabolic syndrome consuming tart cherry juice daily. After 12 weeks, their fasting insulin dropped measurably, and their HOMA-IR score, which is our standard measure of insulin resistance, improved by nearly 20%. The dilution ratio is critical, though. Pure tart cherry juice undiluted contains approximately 25 grams of natural sugar per cup, which is far too much before bed. At 2 tablespoons diluted in 8 ounces of water, you bring total carbohydrates down to roughly 6 grams, while retaining full therapeutic benefit. Brands I have found consistently reliable include Cherubundi and Lakewood Organic. Cost per serving when properly diluted, approximately 40p. Less than a cup of tea from most cafes, and considerably more useful.
And now the moment many of our viewers have been waiting for since you first mentioned it. The 5th drink, the one you described as working on a mechanism no other beverage can replicate, reserved for your most difficult cases. What is it, and what does the latest research actually show?
Fenugreek seed tea. And I want to be precise about why this one is different. Fenugreek seeds contain a unique soluble fiber called galactomannan. When steeped in hot water, this fiber dissolves and forms a gel-like substance that physically slows the breakdown of carbohydrates from your evening meal, delaying glucose absorption well into the overnight hours. But here is what nobody tells you about fenugreek. It also contains an amino acid called 4-hydroxyisoleucine, which directly stimulates insulin secretion, but only in the presence of glucose. It is, in effect, a smart compound. It activates precisely when needed and remains quiet when blood sugar is already low, meaning it will not cause dangerous hypoglycemia during the night. A 2024 meta-analysis published in Frontiers in Pharmacology reviewed 12 randomized controlled trials involving over 600 diabetic patients. Fenugreek supplementation lowered fasting blood glucose by an average of 28 milligrams per deciliter. That exceeds the effect of several commonly prescribed medications. 1 teaspoon of seeds steeped in 8 ounces of boiling water for 10 full minutes, strained, drunk warm 30 to 60 minutes before bed. Available at any Indian grocery or online for approximately £4 per pound of seeds. I had a patient, William, 73 years old, whose fasting glucose had sat stubbornly above 155 for over a year despite medication. 8 weeks of nightly fenugreek tea brought him to 129 consistently. He told me he had started checking his glucose twice each morning just to make sure his meter was not broken. Important caution: fenugreek interacts with blood thinners, including warfarin, and may enhance insulin effect. Always consult your doctor before beginning this one.
Dr. Ashworth, you mentioned earlier that one of the 3 drinks to avoid is actually marketed specifically for people with diabetes, and I have to say, that is something that genuinely shocked me when I first heard it. Before you name it, can you explain why so many well-intentioned products end up working against the very people they claim to help?
It comes down to one word, really: marketing. And here is what nobody tells you about the food industry when it comes to diabetic products. A label does not have to tell the whole truth. It only has to avoid telling an outright lie. The first drink to avoid is flavoured herbal bedtime tea, specifically the popular grocery store varieties that list natural flavours among their ingredients. That phrase, natural flavours, is a legal loophole. It can include sweeteners, sugar alcohols, and small amounts of fruit concentrate that do not always appear clearly in the nutritional panel due to rounding rules. Research from the Center for Science in the Public Interest found that certain flavored teas contain up to 4 grams of hidden carbohydrates per serving. 4 grams sounds trivial until you consider that you are consuming them at the precise moment your metabolism is at its slowest, right before lying down for 8 hours. That is enough to prevent your body from entering the fasted metabolic state it needs for overnight glucose regulation. Always check the full ingredient list. If natural flavors appears in the first 5 ingredients, choose something else.
That is alarming, because so many people reach for herbal tea at bedtime, thinking they are making the safest possible choice. Now, what about the second drink on your warning list? The one that has become enormously fashionable recently and is sold in virtually every health food shop in Britain and America.
Commercial golden milk. Turmeric itself has genuine anti-inflammatory properties, and I have no issue with turmeric. My issue is with what manufacturers add to it. A 12-ounce serving of ready-made golden milk from popular brands contains anywhere from 16 to 24 grams of sugar, typically from coconut sugar, date syrup, or agave, all marketed as natural sweeteners. Your pancreas, I am afraid, does not read marketing materials. It simply sees glucose arriving in the bloodstream at 11 o'clock at night. If you enjoy golden milk, make it yourself at home. Unsweetened almond milk, half a teaspoon of turmeric, a pinch of black pepper to activate the curcumin, and a drop of stevia. Genuinely beneficial. The bottled version from the health food shop, sadly, is not.
And the third drink, the one you described as the most troubling of all because of who it specifically targets. I think our viewers need to hear this one clearly, because many of them may have this product in their fridge right now believing it is helping them.
Diabetic-specific nutritional shakes. Brands such as Glucerna and Boost Glucose Control. These products are positioned directly at people with diabetes, and yet a 2022 review published in the journal Diabetes Therapy found that many of these shakes cause post-meal glucose spikes of 40 to 60 milligrams per deciliter, even when consumed without food. The reason is maltodextrin, a fast-digesting carbohydrate used as a bulking agent with a glycemic index between 85 and 105, higher than ordinary table sugar. The label says designed to minimize blood sugar spikes. What they mean is the added fiber slows the spike fractionally. Fractionally is not the same as safely. If you genuinely need something before bed due to overnight hypoglycemia, 10 almonds and a small piece of cheese provide predictable, measurable nutrition with no hidden surprises. Real food, every time. So let me bring this together simply. Choose one of the 5 drinks and commit to it consistently for 2 full weeks. Your body needs time to respond, and consistency matters far more than perfection. Drink it 30 to 60 minutes before you lie down. Not with dinner, not right at bedtime. That window matters biochemically. Check your fasting glucose every morning and write it down. 14 days of data will tell you more than any article. And tonight, before you go to bed, check what is in your kitchen. If you have flavored herbal teas with natural flavors in the ingredients, commercial golden milk, or diabetic nutritional shakes in the fridge, you now know what to do with them. Your health after 60 is not about doing everything perfectly. It is about understanding your body well enough to make small, consistent changes that genuinely move the needle, and that is always within reach.
If today's conversation has given you something useful, please do share this video with someone you care about, a friend, a spouse, a sibling, anyone managing their blood sugar after 60 who deserves to know what the science actually shows. Give us a like if you found this helpful. Drop a comment below telling us where you are watching from and which of the 5 drinks you are going to try tonight. And if you are not yet subscribed to the Gold Years, please do join us. We are here every week with conversations that we hope genuinely support your health and your life. We are honored to be part of your health journey. This channel is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Always consult your healthcare provider before making health-related decisions. We will see you in the next episode. And before we say goodbye, here is a little health challenge to keep that wonderful mind of yours sharp. We believe staying curious is one of the best medicines of all. Here is today's question. We discussed a compound found in fenugreek seeds that stimulates insulin secretion, but only when glucose is actually present in the bloodstream, making it uniquely safe for overnight use. What is the name of that compound? And here is the bonus part. Can you name one other food that contains a similar smart glucose responsive mechanism? Drop your answer in the comments. We read every single one, and you may just help someone else learn something they needed to hear today.